This month's theme of play made it really tough for me to prepare for today. As much as I was originally tickled by the concept that we would be talking about and playing with the theme of play. And the reason it's been hard to prepare for today is because it's been a rough couple of weeks. Personally, in my own life, in the life of my family, and in the world, there's just always things going on that make it hard to feel playful. So as a result, I haven't been feeling very playful this week and didn't really feel all that playful before I came here today. But there's also this, truth be told, when I was a kid, I was Rudolph. If you know what that means. I was the reindeer most often not invited to the reindeer games. The one whose parents couldn't afford the cool toys that everyone else was playing with. And my parents were also staunch feminists, and so they refused to buy me a Barbie doll for fear that it would warp my sense of what it means to be in a female body, and that made me really angry at the time. I'm now grateful to have navigated my teen years without feeling like I'm incomplete without Ken. Or like I have to wear pink all the time and high heels even at the pool. I haven't seen the movie yet, I do plan to. Growing up in the concrete jungle that is Queens, New York, safe playgrounds were few and far between. They were littered with glass shards and worse when I was growing up. So needless to say, I didn't spend much time on the monkey bars. And I hated to admit this, but my math acuity was never such that I could manage without tremendous stress those games that involve fast counting and keeping score. Card games out of the question for me. And an invitation to game night can set panic attacks into motion. Seriously, still, that is why I haven't shown up to game night. My play was mostly solitary and nature-related or art-related. It was not dependent on having to buy anything in particular, and also not dependent on other people's schedule or their willingness to invite me in and be patient with me as I learned the rules of the game. So there were clearly practical benefits to all of that. I'm not resentful about it. It forced me to get creative with the resources at hand, including spiritual resources that continue to serve me well. But it also meant that I moved through the world feeling other, different, disconnected, not worthy, and never quite sure why. So interestingly, that less than ideal first-hand experience came in very handy as I moved towards Unitarian Universalism and towards ministry itself. Because as I have since learned, many, if not most of us, even those who enjoy and excel at games, feel that way at times. I have learned that many or most of us feel not really sure if they're invited, if they're worthy, as they are. And because I grew up feeling that way, it's not hard for me to have empathy, to anticipate those kinds of feelings in other people, those people who struggle to have a sense of worth and belonging. So I move into pastoral care ministry, and I insist that pastoral care focus be woven into everything that we do together. Because we never know what people are feeling on the inside. You never know who's feeling like Rudolph. So on the other hand, it is a bit odd to be spiritually and professionally aligned with ideals of interdependence and of teamwork and shared exploration as we are here, and to have had so few lived experiences of contributing to the reindeer games when I was growing up. So that realization of experiential discord prompted me about 15 years ago, when I was already connected with Unitarian Universalism and enjoying that playfulness, the way that we can connect and explore together. It prompted me to realize that as a minister, I generally show up feeling like I have to not really fully participate. I have a role that I have to play. And so I wasn't fully letting go into that playful spirit. So about 15 years ago, I decided to explore that, to claim my right to play with play, to figure out what that might look like for me at this stage of my life, and what that might look like while I am in that role, while I'm serving in that way. So I decided to get proactive about it, to not wait for somebody to invite me into that game. I decided to take some risks and have fun with it. And one way that I started doing that was by going to de Benneville Pines Camp, where I met Ross. Going to UU camp, just showing up and being present to the reindeer games, right? I started taking magic lessons in Las Vegas. Yes. And then at the age of 49 or 50, I learned how to hula hoop for the first time. And I learned how to spin fire. I know how to do that, but I don't do it here because of fire danger. I started taking belly dance classes, and I got a tattoo, and I went ziplining for the first time, and I even looked into spending one summer at clown camp. My husband wasn't so sure about that idea. But each and every one of these ideas sparked something for me. They felt momentous, even those that for one reason or other I chose not to pursue, like the clown camp thing. These ideas forced me to confront the realities of my lived experience. They forced me to confront mostly my fears. What am I so afraid of? They increased my sense of adventure and courage, as well as my sense of being able to learn new things and being able to maybe not learn them, maybe fumble and fall and have that be okay too. They taught me to not take myself so seriously all the time, to not separate myself more than I need to. So, but here's the thing, all of those forms of play, aside from UU family camp, they were still mostly solitary. Not too many people saw me hula hooping. So clown camp, I agreed with my husband, it felt a bit too ambitious because, since menopause, the repercussions of a poorly executed somersault are just too dire. So I registered for something else. I found this listing here when I was on vacation one summer. A pagan alchemical fire circle, creative, artistic, spiritual, musical, dance, camping, tie-dye week at a Sufi retreat center in upstate New York. It sounded interesting. And I was thrilled that the timing and the location worked out for me, and because I called to find out, I was also happy to note that Unitarian Universalists were in fact welcome. You didn't have to identify as pagan or as an artist or any of those things. I was happy to note, given some of the other festivals that are going on out there, that drugs and alcohol were actually not part of the deal. They were not permitted. And I was also happy to note that it was not clothing optional. That was a relief. I was less thrilled with the knowledge that after registration, after we all arrived, the front gates would be locked for the duration of those days. No exceptions, no coming and going unless it's a true emergency. I took a deep breath and I went ahead and bought bug spray, and I borrowed a sleeping bag, and I gave George the coordinates so that he would know where to find my body if I didn't come home after 5 days. And then I head off into the woods. With the exception of 2020, and we all know what happened that year, I've gone there to play in the woods every year since, every July, to just let loose. But here's the thing, that play remains every year one of the most challenging experiences of the year. Because in that place, in that subculture where nobody knew what I do professionally, it was assumed, it was taken for granted that I belong fully. And that is so different from what I spent decades believing. It was assumed that the games can't go on without me, and that I needed to be there so that I could help design or reshape the rules of the game. It was assumed that everyone there is the answer to a question that hasn't been asked yet. And that playfully figuring out what that question might be is the whole point of gathering together, not only there for that week, but everywhere, always. I had always preached that in Unitarian Universalist contexts, but rarely did I allow myself to fully experience it. So in that place, I realized, I felt in my body, in an embodied way, the collective delight that you can have in looking for that answer in one another's eyes by the firelight, listening for it in the drumbeat and in the bird song that invariably precedes the first bluing of the morning sky. I experienced in every fiber of my being that there is healing in opening our hearts in unscripted ways, raising our voices in song and in poetry and in prayer, holding one another as we call in the ancestors, as we weep, as we grieve our losses, and as we risk naming the strengths we are discovering within ourselves and within one another. None of that was in the brochure, but that's been my experience. And that is also generally not in the Unitarian Universalist brochure. But it is the experience. It can be the experience. It must be the experience. In ancient times, in many cultures, it was not uncommon to explain both the pleasant and the painful, unfair, inexplicable aspects of human experience in terms of the play of the gods. We are the playthings of the gods. For millennia, fear that the unpredictability of that play might result in untold sufferings lent serious weight to the drama of human life. Felt pretty disempowering. Nowadays, even within many pagan communities, like the one in which I play every summer, the playing field looks very different. Thankfully, rational explanations are applied to events that would otherwise previously be attributed to the whims of the gods. And science is honored. And as part of that, human beings are recognized as being far more complex and interconnected, and as having far more agency than we tend to realize. Collective play is celebrated as a sacrament with transformative potential. A way to unravel whatever has bound us to the misguided belief that we are other, that we are too different, that we are disconnected, that we are not worthy, that we are not essential. Welcomed to that fire circle, dancing around it until sunrise, stiff knees and aching back and all. I feel like I finally learned what maybe I should have 50-something years ago. But I say better late than never. What I've learned can be summed up in this way. Rough days, rough weeks, rough years come with the territory of being human. And it's more than okay to name that. It is essential to name that. And to make adjustments along the way. To play with our to-do lists, to see if there are some ways to weave ease and authenticity and delight into them. Play itself needs to be redefined. It's not just for kids. And it can be a lot scarier and a lot harder than it looks. It can require tremendous courage at any age. It's not always fun immediately. It can connect and build, or it can destroy. So pay attention to the effects of your play when you're in the middle of it and when you haven't been for a while. Pay attention to who is and who is not being invited or doesn't feel like they're being invited. Who needs to be invited in a different way? And if you're the one feeling left out, listen for the stories that you're telling yourself about why. And feel your way into those stories that allow you to risk bringing courage and joy into the choices that you make. Even if others look at you askance, as my kids do when they hear about what I do in the woods every summer. Wearing tie-dye and with flowers in my hair. Know that while there are those who feel they own life's rule book, it's not a done deal until everyone has contributed to it. The game is unfolding as we speak. It really is. So never underestimate the transformative power of playing with ideas about who and whose we are and what we do or don't have control over. Lastly, use every opportunity to look into one another's eyes deeply, because that is where we are most likely to find the answer to the questions we have not yet known to ask. So may it be.